A few years ago, motorcycles were loud, proud, and symbolic of freedom. The unmistakable growl of a Harley, the shriek of a high-revving sport bike. These were the war cries of a tribe that lived for the ride. Fast forward to 2025, and that roar is more of a whisper, maybe even a wheeze. The motorcycle market isn't just down bad, it's in a full-on tailspin. We're talking about showroom floors stacked with bikes collecting more dust than miles. The same machines that once flew off dealer lots are now clocking 200 plus days unsold. And that's with price tags slashed like a Black Friday doorbuster at Walmart. Harley-Davidson, BMW, Honda, everyone is feeling the heat, but here's the kicker. This catastrophe didn't come out of the blue. It's been building for years. The symptoms were there: rising prices, vanishing starter bikes, weird electrical experiments, and an industry that forgot why people ride in the first place. Now it's all come home to roost. So what happened? How did the market go from throttled up to stalled out practically overnight? Grab your helmet, we're diving in. If you want to know more about the motorcycle industry or just love bikes, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It helps me keep putting out important information like this to keep you informed on what's going on in the industry. So what sparked the collapse? You remember 2020, right? The world went on lockdown, getting groceries became a competitive sport, and because people stayed home so much, everyone with cabin fever discovered motorcycles. Sales surged. It was like the 1960s all over again, only this time, the rebels had GoPros and Instagram accounts. The open road was freedom incarnate, and two wheels were the ultimate escape pod from a world gone mad. But here's the problem. Manufacturers took that pandemic spike and mistook it for a permanent shift. They thought they'd struck gold, or should we say liquid-cooled platinum. So they did what any corporate entity with a heartbeat and a quarterly earnings report would do. They ramped up production, expanded model lines, and greenlit expensive new tech. It was full throttle ahead. Factories pumped out inventory like there was no tomorrow. Harley dropped new cruisers with tech packages so fancy they could probably detect your midlife crisis in real time. Yamaha expanded their MT line like it was an Avengers franchise. BMW started building bikes that looked like they belonged in a sci-fi movie about a luxury electric apocalypse. Meanwhile, prices crept higher, and higher, and higher. Entry-level bikes that used to go for $6,000 started pushing 12. Premium cruisers hit the 30K mark. Suddenly, motorcycles were less about freedom and more about financing. Lots of it. Here's where the trouble started brewing. Manufacturers were making decisions based on a sugar high, an artificial demand spike caused by lockdown boredom and stimulus checks. But once reality returned, people weren't exactly rushing to finance $28,000 cruisers. Gas prices went up, groceries got more expensive, and that dream bike, it looked a lot less dreamy next to the heating bill. Consumers didn't just slow down, they ghosted the showrooms. What was supposed to be a new golden age of riding turned into a parade of no-shows. Production stayed hot, but buyer interest cooled faster than a Honda engine in winter. Worse, dealers didn't get the memo. Inventory piled up, more models were ordered, new ones were launched, the floor plan financing dug its claws in deeper. Dealerships started looking less like retail spaces and more like expensive storage units full of depreciating steel. It's not just the demand fell, it evaporated. And when the bottom dropped out, it wasn't a gentle decline. It was a high side crash. No time to bail. No chance to brace. Suddenly, dealers were stuck with bikes they couldn't sell, loans they couldn't pay, and customers who were either too broke, too cautious, or too disinterested to care. The collapse wasn't caused by one thing. It was a perfect storm of bad timing, poor forecasting, economic whiplash, and corporate hubris. And the industry? It didn't just miscalculate the market. It misread the soul of motorcycling. They built inventory for a demand that didn't exist anymore, and now they're paying for it, one unsold bike at a time. Personally, I wouldn't say I feel bad about what's happening to motorcycle manufacturers, and you'll soon understand what I mean by that. Remember when motorcycles were the blue-collar dream? A way for the everyday rider to chase freedom, adrenaline, and the occasional bug in the teeth without needing a second mortgage? Yeah, those days have gone the way of carburetors and Kickstarters. Now, buying a motorcycle feels more like applying for a luxury yacht loan. Over the last 5 years, the average price of a motorcycle has jumped over 40%. Not because of groundbreaking innovation or game-changing tech, but mostly because manufacturers collectively decided to dress the same old bikes in fancier jackets and call it premium. Spoiler alert, riders noticed. Take Harley's Street Glide. Back in 2019, it cost around $22,000. Expensive, but not unreasonable for a big touring bike. Fast forward to today, and you're staring down a price tag closer to $35,000. That's SUV territory. You could haul your whole family across the country in a new Subaru for that kind of cash, or you could ride solo and hope it doesn't rain. And it's not just the big boys. Entry-level bikes like the Yamaha MT-07 or Honda Rebel used to be the go-to for new riders and budget-conscious commuters. Now they're flirting with the $15,000 mark after the must-have tech upgrades. Touchscreens, cornering ABS, ride modes, Bluetooth. Fancy stuff, but none of it makes the engine sound better or the ride more thrilling. Manufacturers called this premiumization. Riders call it nonsense. Here's the irony. While prices went up, the core riding experience barely changed. A motorcycle from 2025 doesn't do anything radically different from one made a decade ago, except maybe nag you about tire pressure through an app. And when rent, fuel, groceries, and healthcare are already playing whack-a-mole with your paycheck, dropping 30 grand on a glorified weekend toy starts to look insane. Especially when used bikes from a few years back offer 90% of the experience for half the cost. Riders know it. They've wised up, and they're pushing back with their wallets. People are holding on to their current bikes longer. They're hitting the used market or just saying screw it and sitting the whole thing out. Why upgrade when the so-called improvements are skin deep and come with a price tag that looks like a phone number? Even worse, many of the newer, more expensive bikes are actually less enjoyable to ride. In the race to meet emissions standards and pack in the latest tech, some manufacturers have choked out performance or stripped away the raw mechanical feel that riders crave. The end result is a prettier, pricier, more polished bike that's somehow less fun. Let's not forget insurance. Higher bike prices mean higher premiums. In some US states, insurance rates have nearly doubled, especially for anything with high horsepower or low crash forgiveness. When your monthly insurance bill looks suspiciously like a car payment, that's a red flag waving in the wind. The conclusion? Riders aren't just balking at the price, they're questioning the value. And once that happens, it doesn't matter how many new models hit the market. If people don't believe they're getting more for their money, they're out. The financing fiasco. Okay, so let's say you're still on board. You found your dream bike, you've convinced your spouse it's a safety decision, and you're ready to sign on the dotted line. There's just one tiny problem. The bank doesn't want to play ball. Financing in 2025 is like trying to win a sword fight with a pool noodle. Back in 2019, you could snag a motorcycle loan at a breezy 3 to 5%. It was doable, manageable, people could justify a splurge. Now, those same loans come with interest rates anywhere from 9 to a gut-punching 18%, if you get approved at all. For context, financing a $30,000 bike at 3% interest over 5 years would have cost you about $3,000 in interest. At 15%, you're coughing up over 12 grand. That's another used bike right there, just in interest. Let that sink in. And lenders aren't messing around anymore. They've gone from sure, take it home today, to show me your last 3 pay stubs, a DNA sample, and your SAT scores. Even buyers with decent credit are facing tighter approval processes, higher down payment requirements, and more scrutiny than a toddler in a cookie jar. Why the shift? Simple. Risk. Motorcycle loans have always been riskier for banks. Bikes are considered recreational vehicles, a fancy term for non-essential toys you'll stop paying for when things get rough. And guess what? Things are rough. Inflation is up, wages are stagnant, and lenders have seen enough delinquencies and repossessions in the last year to turn cautious. According to some financing companies, as many as 1 in 5 loan applications are getting flat out rejected. That's 20% of potential buyers dead in the water before they can even put their helmet on. And don't forget insurance again, because if you do manage to get financed, now you've got to insure the thing. The premiums are spiraling right alongside interest rates. In states like California and Florida, some riders report paying over $2,000 a year to insure a mid-ranged bike. Add it all up and you've got a brutal equation. High prices, insane interest, sky-high insurance, and a buyer pool getting smaller by the day. Even dealers offering 0% financing for short terms can't move the needle because most buyers don't even make it past the credit check. This financing fiasco isn't just a hiccup, it's a locked gate between buyers and bikes, and the padlock has a name: economic reality. Dealerships in crisis. If motorcycle dealerships had a vital signs monitor, 2025 would be showing a flat line. Small independent shops, the beating heart of the riding community, are dying off faster than you can say 0% APR. Why? Because dealers are stuck in a financial trap so vicious, it makes a bear trap look like a welcome mat. The issue boils down to this: they don't actually own most of the bikes on their showroom floors. Those shiny Harleys, slick Yamahas, and chrome-drenched cruisers, they're financed through something called floor plan loans. It's like a credit card for dealers, one that charges interest daily for every unsold bike. In boom times, it's manageable. Bikes move fast, dealers clear their inventory, and everybody wins. But in 2025, with sales in the toilet and buyers disappearing like socks in a drawer, bikes are sitting, and sitting, and sitting. Some have been collecting showroom dust for over 300 days. That's not inventory, that's financial quicksand. Here's how bad it gets. Imagine having 100 bikes on the floor, each racking up $5 to $15 in interest per day. Multiply that by months of inactivity, and you've got a debt bomb ticking away beneath the tile floors. And while the bikes sit, so does the rent, utilities, employee wages, insurance, and marketing costs. It's a death by 1,000 invoices. Now sprinkle on the cherry of rising interest rates and the whipped cream of plummeting foot traffic. Voila, you've got yourself a crisis Sunday. Family-owned dealerships are especially vulnerable. These are the shops where riders bought their first bikes, swapped stories, and got talked into just one more aftermarket exhaust. They thrived on community, loyalty, and volume. But in a year like this, none of that pays the bills. Volume's gone, loyalty's under strain, and community, it doesn't count for much when the bank comes knocking. Many dealers are trying to escape the trap, cutting losses, begging manufacturers to take bikes back, or slashing prices so deep you'd think they were throwing a garage sale. Some are straight up closing, quietly, permanently. Another shuttering storefront in an industry running out of oxygen. The big corporate dealerships are hanging on, barely. Not because they're smarter, but because they have deeper pockets and safety nets. They can eat a few million in losses and call it a Tuesday. Mom and pop shops can't. And the fallout isn't just economic, it's cultural. As these shops vanish, so does the soul of motorcycling. The conversations, the test rides, the just browsing Saturdays that turned into spontaneous purchases. All of it fades, leaving behind faceless online listings and showroom floors that feel more like mausoleums than marketplaces. This isn't just a market correction, it's an extinction event for the people who made motorcycling personal. The used market unravels. Surprisingly, even the used market is taking a hit. The used motorcycle market used to be the industry's trusty pressure release valve. Can't afford a new bike? No problem. Grab a 2-year-old model with low miles, some scuffs, but plenty of character. It's where new riders started and seasoned riders scored their next project or side bike. But now, even that safety net has snapped. Triggered it. One word: repos. As financing dried up and interest rates went full Darth Vader on monthly payments, thousands of riders found themselves underwater. Bikes were getting repossessed at record pace. Some estimates say motorcycle repossessions are up nearly 30% year over year. That's not a drip, that's a flood. And all those repossessed bikes? They're being dumped at auctions, wholesale lots, and online platforms, flooding the used market with an overwhelming surplus. The result? Prices are collapsing faster than a stunt rider without a helmet. A bike that sold for 12 grand last year might only fetch 8 now. Trade-in values are falling off a cliff. In fact, many dealerships aren't even accepting trade-ins anymore. Why would they? They can't sell what they've already got. Taking in more used bikes is like trying to stop a fire with a bucket of gasoline. For current owners, this is a nightmare. You want to upgrade, but your trade-in is worth less than you owe. You're stuck. For potential buyers, it's actually kind of a dream. There are deals everywhere if you're buying from a private party. That's right, buyers are skipping the dealerships altogether and heading straight to Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, and peer-to-peer platforms. Why walk into a showroom with commission-hungry salespeople when you can Venmo a neighbor for the same bike at a third of the cost? But here's the double-edged sword. While used bike deals are everywhere, it's not helping the new market. In fact, it's making things worse. Why pay full price for a brand new model, complete with painful interest and sky-high insurance, when you can get last year's version with 3,000 miles and $10,000 in savings? The used market, once a helpful fallback, has now become a vortex, sucking demand, dollars, and momentum away from new sales. It's no longer a complement to the industry, it's a competitor. And because so many of those bikes hitting the used market are repos, there's an emotional cost too. Riders are selling or losing machines they loved. What was once an act of passion is now a painful financial decision. The joy of riding is being replaced by the cold logic of survival. And here's the twist: this collapse might not be over. If economic conditions keep tightening, more bikes will hit the repo pile, more values will drop, and more potential buyers will hold off, hoping to scoop up even better deals tomorrow. So yeah, the used market is booming, but not in a good way. It's booming like a minefield. The industry's biggest flops. Now we've talked about so many factors that led to the market crash, but we still haven't talked about one important thing: the bikes that made people hate riding. These bikes were supposed to be the next big thing. Instead, they're showroom statues, glossy, overpriced paperweights that no one wants to ride home. One of the biggest offenders is the Harley-Davidson Livewire. This is Harley's electrified dream that turned into a very expensive nightmare. This bike was meant to future-proof Harley's brand, attract younger, eco-conscious riders, and plant the bar and shield firmly in the EV space. Instead, it alienated die-hard fans and bored Gen Z. Priced north of 22 grand, the Livewire stripped out the Harley soul and replaced it with silence and a charging cable. Riders said meh, and Livewire said, "I'm still here, collecting floor dust." Then there's the Indian Challenger Dark Horse, a gorgeous cruiser with a $28,000 tag and a serious identity crisis. It was supposed to take on Harley's Road Glide, but all it really did was sit awkwardly in the middle. Not traditional enough for boomers, not modern enough for millennials. Now it's the bike equivalent of a prom king who peaked too early. Great on paper, ignored in reality. Sport bikes? Don't even get us started. The Kawasaki Ninja H2SX SE was supposed to be a flex on engineering brilliance. Supercharged, high-tech, fast enough to bend time, but it came in at nearly $28,000, was too niche for daily riders, too pricey for weekend riders, and had insurance costs that could bankrupt small countries. Same story with the Suzuki GSX R1000R, once a track day legend, now a relic. The competition passed it by in tech and performance, and Suzuki just didn't keep up. Riders took one look and said, oh cool, 2016 called, they want their bike back. Then we had the EV scooter wildcards like the BMW CE04. This futuristic scooter looked like something out of Blade Runner, but rode like a leaf blower with anxiety. At $12,000, buyers couldn't figure out if it was a motorcycle, a laptop on wheels, or a stylish way to announce you don't like fun. Turns out it was none of the above. Oh, and let's not forget the Ducati Panigale V2. A beautiful machine, no doubt, but with a $17,000 base price and insurance rates that make your accountant weep, it became a showroom trophy more than a street weapon. It priced out casual riders and became another member of the Look But Don't Touch club. What all these flops share is a fatal miscalculation. They were built for a customer that either no longer exists or never existed to begin with. Big price tags, niche appeal, too much tech, not enough soul, and in a market demanding value, these bikes offered little beyond flashy press photos and overambitious marketing. In short, great bikes, wrong buyers, wrong time, wrong strategy. Factories go silent. You know it's bad when even the factories start waving the white flag. In 2025, it's not just dealership floors that are quiet, it's the assembly lines. Across the world, motorcycle manufacturers are slamming the brakes on production, and not just to adjust supply. We're talking major shutdowns, layoffs, and entire R&D departments hitting the pause button. Harley-Davidson has cut production by 25%. Their New York, Pennsylvania facility is now operating on a 4-day work week. There are even rumors about full-on temporary shutdowns, because no one's buying, there's no point in building. Harley didn't just overshoot demand, they rocketed into the stratosphere while everyone else stayed grounded. Honda isn't immune either. In Japan and Thailand, factory workers are being laid off in waves. North American output has been slashed. Model updates for 2016 have been postponed indefinitely. Even Big Red is bleeding. And then there's BMW Motorrad. In 2025, output has dropped by a quarter. Assembly lines in Berlin have slowed to a crawl, and internal teams are shifting gears from innovation mode to survival strategy. Why all the shutdowns? Simple math. Inventory is stacking up like Tetris blocks. Dealers can't take more bikes, consumers aren't buying, and manufacturers are paying through the nose for storage, labor, and shipping. Speaking of which, supply chain issues haven't gone away. Raw materials are still expensive, shipping is a logistical horror show, and tariffs are flaring up like bad road rash. Add rising factory energy costs to the mix, and suddenly the cost to build each bike is more than buyers are willing to pay. So what do you do when your costs rise but your consumers vanish? You shut it all down. And it's not just a production issue, it's a full-blown identity crisis. Brands that were once innovators are now playing defense, trying to survive long enough to pivot. The brand identity crisis. Apart from the miscalculations made by motorcycle manufacturers, they also seem to have forgotten the original mission. Back in the day, motorcycles weren't just machines. They were statements. You didn't just ride a Harley, you were a Harley rider. You didn't just own a Ducati, you were a high-octane connoisseur of Italian flair and questionable decision-making. But somewhere between the spreadsheets and the shareholders, the brands forgot what they stood for. Welcome to 2025, where the biggest crisis isn't mechanical, it's existential. Let's start with Harley-Davidson, the original rebel brand. For decades, it was synonymous with blue jeans, black leather, and a healthy disregard for the rules. But lately, it's been leaning into electric mobility, ESG checkboxes, and lifestyle branding that feels like it came from a Silicon Valley PowerPoint deck. Somewhere along the road to modernity, they swapped out grit for graphs. The Livewire wasn't just a production misfire, it was a branding contradiction on two wheels. Harley riders didn't want silence, they wanted soul, thunder, something that rattled your ribcage and scared your neighbors. Instead, they got an overpriced Tesla on two wheels with a weak range and a weaker message. Cue the awkward silence and showroom stagnation. Then there's Indian Motorcycles, which tried to thread the needle between modern tech and old school Americana. The result? A brand that stuck between trying to out-Harley and being the Apple of cruisers. Their bikes are solid, their message? Confused. Riders don't know whether they're supposed to feel nostalgic or futuristic, and marketing that's trying to do both often lands nowhere. BMW and Ducati, they leaned hard into luxury, dashboards more complex than your home office, touchscreens, apps, rider profiles, hill hold assist. It's a tech bro's dream, but somewhere along the way, they forgot the ride. Riders just wanted an honest machine that felt alive, not something that asked for a software update before it would start in the morning. Even Triumph, the brand that built its identity on timeless design and British cool, got caught in the premiumization trap, leaving their once affordable classics with price tags that make vintage owners laugh bitterly over their pints. Real problem here? These companies started chasing everyone, and in trying to appeal to every demographic, they started losing the people who actually ride. Marketing became abstract, targeting lifestyle segments instead of real riders. They started selling mobility solutions instead of motorcycles. You know who noticed? Everyone. Riders aren't buying into fake authenticity anymore. They see through the recycled taglines and hollow branding. They don't want another email about your carbon footprint strategy. They want to know why your $30,000 motorcycle has a plastic gas cap and a touchscreen that lags. This isn't just a branding hiccup. It's an identity implosion. And in a time when the market is shrinking and loyalty is more important than ever, brands that don't reconnect with their core riders might not get a second chance. Lessons from the last crash. Now, before we move further, let's rewind the tape. It's 2008. The economy's tanking, the housing bubble just burst, and people are canceling more purchases than Netflix subscriptions. Motorcycle sales? Absolutely plummeting. It was brutal, but some brands survived. A few even thrived. So what was the secret? Adaptability. Back then, Honda and Kawasaki didn't try to force $20,000 bikes down people's throats. They got smart. They released smaller, cheaper, practical machines. The CBR 250R, Ninja 300, and CRF 250L weren't sexy, but they were accessible. They gave cash-strapped riders something they could afford, and they sold like hotcakes. These bikes were approachable, reliable, and affordable. Not lifestyle trophies, but genuine tools for real riders. And in the process, they brought in a whole new generation of enthusiasts. It was strategy meets humility, a rare combo in a market known for bravado. Meanwhile, other brands didn't pivot, and they paid the price. Buell, Harley's sport bike experiment, got the axe. Despite some great machines, the brand couldn't make a compelling case in a tightening economy. Victory, despite its promise and cult following, was eventually shelved by Polaris so they could go all in on Indian. The lesson? You either adjust to the moment, or you become a memory. Now fast forward to 2025. Deja vu anyone? Economic uncertainty? Check. Inflation? Check. Customers cutting back on big purchases? Triple check. It's 08 all over again. But this time, with even more risk, fewer new riders, and a growing disconnect between manufacturers and their customer base. But here's the real danger: generational drift. Back in 2008, Gen X and older millennials were still wide-eyed enough to fall in love with bikes. In 2025, the youngest generations aren't even glancing over their shoulders. If they can't DoorDash it, stream it, or finance it interest-free, they're not interested. They're choosing convenience over combustion. And brands that don't adapt to that shift, or worse, continue alienating their core audience while failing to attract new blood, are heading straight for a second crash. Only this time, there might not be a comeback tour. The industry had 17 years to learn from 2008. Some did, many didn't. And now the same cracks are showing, only deeper, wider, and with far more at stake. The future of motorcycling. Even though the market has taken a hit, things will eventually level up, but when they do, the industry will be very different. Because the next motorcycle boom, it's not going to sound like a boom at all. It'll be quiet, light, electric, and probably connected to your phone. The future of motorcycling is being forged in places where exhaust notes are banned, parking is a mythical concept, and Gen Z sees ownership as a quaint relic of the past. Urbanization is driving this transformation. Cities are getting denser, traffic's a mess, fuel prices are flirting with insanity, and governments around the world are clamping down on emissions harder than ever. The big V-twin cruisers, sports bikes, and ADV monsters, they're losing relevance in places where speed limits are low, potholes are high, and nobody has room for a second vehicle. In their place, we're seeing the rise of e-scooters, lightweight electric commuters, and app-connected mopeds that look more like tech gadgets than motorcycles. Super Soco, NIU, Gogoro, Horwin. These are the names that might mean nothing to your average biker today, but they're already dominating urban micro-mobility markets in Asia and Europe. Their bikes are simple, efficient, quiet, and cheap. And most importantly, they make sense to young people who value flexibility over horsepower. Ownership itself is morphing. We're moving into a world where a monthly subscription gets you a rideable electric two-wheeler, insurance, charging, and maybe even free roadside assistance. For Gen Z, this isn't just normal, it's better. Why deal with maintenance and depreciation when you can swap your vehicle like a phone upgrade? Even bike design is changing. Forget bulky engines and fuel tanks. The bikes of the future will look minimalist, software-driven, and always connected. We're talking built-in GPS, mobile app diagnostics, ride tracking, anti-theft features, even performance tuning via smartphone sliders. It's iPhone meets Vespa with a side of Uber. Will this shift be painful for traditionalists? Oh, absolutely. There's a real cultural divide brewing between the old guard who still believes in wrenching, revving, and real roads, and the new crowd who want convenience, connectivity, and quiet. But here's the flip side. This transformation isn't all doom and gloom. It's opportunity. If brands like Honda, Royal Enfield, and even the more adaptable upstarts can find ways to bridge heritage with innovation, they could lead the charge into this new era. Build bikes that are light, smart, and fun, but don't forget the joy of riding. Focus on affordability, ease of use, and emotional appeal. Reignite the spark, not just with tech, but with story, because motorcycling doesn't have to die, but it does have to evolve. Should you buy, sell, or wait? Alright, after all the market meltdowns, repo sagas, and floor plan disasters, here comes the million-dollar question. What should you do right now? Buy? Sell? Wait? All of the above? None of the above? Let's break it down. If you're thinking of buying a bike, this might be one of the best buyer's markets in recent history, if you play your cards right. Dealerships are desperate to move units. That means deep discounts, incentives galore, and sometimes 0% interest for short-term loans if you've got great credit. You could snag a $20,000 bike for 15 grand or less in the right place. But here's the rub. Financing is brutal unless you've got A+ credit, and resale values dropping faster than a naked bike in the rain. If you're planning to flip the bike in a year or two, you'll probably take a bath. So only buy if you plan to keep it for the long haul. Think 5+ years. Buy for love, not leverage. And if you're not super particular about getting a showroom fresh model, the used market is a goldmine. Low mileage bikes at 30 to 40% off retail, plenty of motivated sellers, and less exposure to high interest loans if you buy in cash or through personal financing. Just be ready to hunt around and vet the deals. If you're thinking of selling, do it now, like yesterday. The used market is being flooded with repos and trade-ins. Prices are falling by the week. That $10,000 trade-in offer you're stalling on might be $8,000 by next quarter. Even if it hurts to sell below your ideal price now, waiting might just hurt more. Don't get emotionally attached to the number in your head. Get what you can while demand is still above zero, especially if your bike is a mid-tier commuter, a beginner model, or something under 10K. Those are still moving. The high-end stuff, they're already sinking. If you're thinking of waiting, smart move. If you're not in a rush and you've got your ear to the ground, waiting might get you better prices. More distressed dealers could start dumping inventory as the crash deepens. Used prices will likely continue to slide as repos surge and demand stays soft. But here's the gamble. If you wait too long, financing could tighten even further, insurance might spike again, and the exact bike you want might vanish from dealer lots entirely as manufacturers cut production. So, timing matters. If you're playing the long game, keep watching interest rates, inventory levels, and manufacturer incentives, and have your finances ready, because when the deal shows up, you'll need to move fast. This isn't a normal downturn, it's a fundamental shift. But if you're informed, strategic, and a little patient, you can still come out on top. The road ahead is rough, but not impossible. And whether you're buying, selling, or just waiting to see what happens next, one thing's for sure, this industry is being rebuilt in real time. So if you're watching closely, you might just ride the wave instead of being crushed by it. But tell me, is the biker spirit dying, or do people still care as much about riding as they did before? Share your opinions with me in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. See you in the next video.